Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship, the New Horizon. He looked out at the stars and smiled. It was a good day to be alive. The year was 5024, and humans had not fought a war in 3,000 years. Jake had never seen a real battle, and he was happy about that. His ship was exploring new worlds and meeting new alien friends. That was what humans did now. They explored, they learned, and they helped others. War was something from the old history books that children studied in school. "Captain," said his crew member, Lisa Chun, "we're getting a message from Earth." Jake nodded. "Put it on the screen." The face of Admiral Kate Sullivan appeared. She looked worried, which was strange. Kate was always calm and happy. She ran the Galactic Peace Corps, which mostly helped lost ships and organized parties between different alien races. "Jake, we have a problem," Kate said. "Long-range sensors have picked up something big coming from the Andromeda Galaxy." "Really? Big?" Jake frowned. "How big?" 50,000 ships, maybe more. The bridge went quiet. Jake's crew had never heard of a fleet that large. Most alien races had maybe 100 ships total. 50,000 was like nothing anyone had ever seen. "Who are they?" Jake asked. "They call themselves the Korthic Empire," Kate replied. "They've been conquering their own galaxy for the past 500 years. Now they're coming here." Jake felt his stomach drop. "What do they want?" "Everything. They sent us a message an hour ago." Kate's face grew dark. "They want us to surrender all human worlds. We have 72 hours to decide. And if we don't, they'll destroy every human in the galaxy." Jake's crew looked at each other with fear in their eyes. They were explorers, not fighters. They studied plants and rocks and made friends with alien dolphins. How could they fight an empire that had conquered half of another galaxy? "Kate," Jake said slowly, "what are we going to do?" "We don't have any weapons. We haven't fought a war in 3,000 years. Most people don't even know how to fight." Admiral Sullivan was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled, and Jake saw something in her eyes that he had never seen before. It was not fear. It was not worry. It was something else, something that made his skin feel strange. "Jake, I need you to come back to Earth right away. Bring your ship to the Luna station. There are things we need to show you, things that have been sleeping for a very long time." "What kind of things?" "The kind of things our great-great-grandparents decided to lock away. The kind of things they hoped we would never need again." The message ended, and Jake stared at the empty screen. Around him, his crew was quiet. Finally, Lisa spoke up. "Captain, what did she mean? What things?" Jake shook his head. "I don't know, but I think we're about to find out." On the other side of the galaxy, Warlord Dexkar sat in his command ship. He was huge, even for a Korthic. His skin was dark red, and his 4 arms were covered in scars from 1,000 battles. He had conquered 47 worlds in his lifetime, and he had never lost a fight. "Report," he growled to his intelligence officer. "The humans have received our message, Warlord. They have not responded yet. What do our spies tell us about them?" The intelligence officer looked at his datapad. "They are weak, Warlord. They have not fought a war in 3,000 years. They have no military. Their ships are for exploration only. They spend their time growing food and making art." Dexkar laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. 3,000 years of peace? They have forgotten what it means to fight. This will be easy. Should we prepare for their surrender, Warlord? Yes, but also prepare for battle. Some species are too stupid to know when they are beaten. We will show them what happens to those who resist the Korthic Empire. Back on Earth, in the deep tunnels under the Pacific Ocean, machines that had been silent for 3,000 years began to wake up. Lights flickered on in corridors that no human had walked in centuries. Computer systems that had been sleeping started to run through their startup sequences. Dr. Alex Carter, Earth's chief historian, got a call at 3 in the morning. The voice on the other end was someone he had never heard of, but they knew his. Security codes. Dr. Carter, this is General Harrison. I need you to come to Sector 7 immediately. General who? I've never heard of any General Harrison. And what's Sector 7? Dr. Carter, as of 6 hours ago, the Terran Federation has been placed under military emergency protocols. Protocols that were written 3,000 years ago. I am the commanding officer of the Terran Defense Force. A force that, until today, officially did not exist. Alex felt confused. I don't understand. We don't have a military. We dissolved all military forces after the Great Peace. No, Dr. Carter, we put them to sleep. There's a difference. And now it's time to wake them up. All across human space, strange things began to happen. On the farming world of New Eden, Ben Taylor was working in his fields when the ground began to shake. He watched in amazement as huge metal doors opened in the earth, doors he had never seen before. Inside, he could see massive machines covered in dust. On the moon colonies, children playing in the parks stopped to stare as buildings began to rise from underground. Their parents had no idea what they were looking at, but something deep in their minds whispered that they should be proud. Not afraid. In the asteroid belt, miners reported that old mining equipment was turning itself on. But this wasn't mining equipment. It was something else. Something that looked like it was made for war. The Korthik had given humanity 72 hours to surrender. They expected fear. They expected begging. They expected humans to offer them anything to avoid a fight. What they got was different. Admiral Sullivan's response was broadcast across the galaxy. Her voice was calm and cheerful, like she was talking to old friends. Dear Korthik Empire, she said, thank you for your message. We have considered your offer to surrender, and we must politely decline. We will be here waiting for you when you arrive. Please try not to make too much of a mess. We just finished redecorating. And then, before the message ended, something happened that puzzled the Korthik completely. They heard the sound of humans laughing. Not nervous laughter or scared laughter. Happy laughter. Like they had just heard a funny joke. Warlord Thexkar replayed the message 3 times, trying to understand what he had heard. In his experience, weak races begged for mercy. Strong races threatened revenge. But humans were doing neither. They were laughing. Perhaps, he thought, they are more foolish than we believed. He was about to learn how wrong he was. Dr. Alex Carter stood in front of the biggest door he had ever seen. It was made of some kind of metal that seemed to eat light. General Harrison stood beside him, wearing a uniform that Alex had only seen in museums. This door hasn't been opened in 3,000 years, Harrison said. Your handprint is needed to unlock it. My handprint? Why would my handprint work on something that old? Because your family has been the keepers of this secret for a very long time. Your great-great-grandmother was the one who helped seal this place. Alex pressed his hand against a panel next to the door. For a moment, nothing happened. Then lights began to flash, and the massive door started to open with a sound like thunder. Inside was a room so big that Alex couldn't see the walls. Thousands of machines filled the space, all of them humming quietly. Computer screens showed maps of the galaxy, numbers that changed every second, and images of ships he didn't recognize. What is this place? Alex whispered. This is the Strategic Defense Center, Harrison explained. When humanity decided to stop fighting wars, we didn't throw away everything we had learned. We stored it, all of it. Alex walked deeper into the room. He saw machines that looked like they could build entire cities. Others looked like they could take cities apart. All of them were working, even though they had been sleeping for thousands of years. The Korthik think we're weak because we haven't fought in 3,000 years, Harrison continued. They don't understand that we chose not to fight. There's a big difference between can't and won't. On the industrial moon of Titan, factory manager Sam Rodriguez was having the strangest day of his life. The factories he managed made farming equipment and spaceship parts. Normal, peaceful things. But this morning, everything had changed. Factories were still running, but they were making different things now. Things that Sam had never seen before, but somehow looked familiar. Long, sleek objects that hummed with power. Armor that seemed to bend light around it. Weapons that made Sam's hands shake just looking at them. Sam called his assistant, Maria Santos. The computers are showing production orders from 3,000 years ago. How is that possible? Sam looked at the screens. The orders were there, clear as day. Build 10,000 pulse rifles. Build 5,000 gravity bombs. Build 1,000 planet shields. All signed by someone called Defense Minister Williams in the year 2156. I don't know, Sam said. But the machines seem to know what they're doing. Across human space, the same thing was happening everywhere. On Mars, weapon factories that had been disguised as water processing plants began to work. On Europa, shipyards that people thought made cargo vessels started building something very different. Young Amy Brooks had just graduated from the Space Academy. She wanted to be an explorer like Captain Morrison. Instead, she got a message telling her to report to something called Combat Division. She had never heard of Combat Division. The office was in a part of the academy that she had never seen before. When she walked in, she found dozens of other young people who looked just as confused as she felt. Welcome to your real education, said a man in a military uniform. I'm Colonel Tony Martinez. For the past 3,000 years, my family has been keeping certain skills alive. Skills that we hoped we would never need again. What kind of skills? Amy asked. Colonel Martinez smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who knew dangerous secrets. The kind of skills that built the human empire. The kind of skills that made other species afraid to attack us. The kind of skills that we put away because we got too good at them. He led them to a training room. On the walls were weapons that looked like they belonged in a museum. But when Amy picked one up, it felt right in her hands, like she had been born to hold it. Your great-great-grandmother was a Marine, Martinez told her. She fought in the Centauri Wars. She was very good at it. Too good. That's why she supported the Great Peace. She knew what would happen if humans kept fighting. What would happen? We would win. We would win everything. And then there would be nothing left to win. Meanwhile, Captain Jake Morrison was flying back to Earth as fast as his ship could go. But something was wrong with the New Horizon. It was moving faster than it should. Much faster. Lisa, he called to his engineer. Why are we going so fast? I don't know, Captain. The engines are running at 150% capacity. But the temperature is normal. It's like they're more efficient than they used to be. Jake frowned. Run a diagnostic on all systems. Already did. Everything's working perfectly. But Captain, we're also showing weapon systems that we don't have. What do you mean? The computer says we have pulse cannons, shield generators, and something called a reality anchor. But I've never seen these systems before. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Show me. Lisa brought up the ship's blueprint on the main screen. The New Horizon looked the same as always, but now there were red dots all over it. Weapon systems that had been hidden in the walls. Power. Sources that had been disguised as normal equipment. Our exploration ship, Jake said quietly, is actually a warship. It looks like it, Lisa agreed. A very advanced warship. The Korthik Empire was getting ready for war. Warlord Nexcar had called together his greatest generals to plan the attack on human space. "We will hit their border colonies first," he announced. "Show them what happens to those who resist. Then we will move on their core worlds." "What about their military?" asked General Vextar. "What military?" "Our spies say they have no warships, no weapons, no soldiers. They are sheep waiting to be slaughtered." But even as he spoke, Vextar felt uneasy. The human response to their ultimatum had been strange. No fear, no anger, just laughter. In his long career of conquest, he had never encountered anything like it. "Perhaps we should study them more before we attack," suggested another general. "No," Vextar growled. "We have wasted enough time. The humans have had their 72 hours. Now they will learn what it means to defy the Korthic Empire." Back on Earth, children were playing in the streets. But their games had changed. Instead of playing explorer or scientist, they were playing soldier. And they were very good at it. Too good for children who had never seen War. 8-year-old. Bobby Chun was showing his friends how to take apart a toy gun and put it back together. He had never seen a real gun, but his hands moved like he had been doing this for years. "Where did you learn that?" asked his friend Sally. "I don't know," Bobby said. "I just know." His grandmother watched from the window. She was old enough to remember her own grandmother's stories about the old days. Stories about when humans were warriors instead of farmers. Stories about when other species feared the sight of human ships. "It's in their blood," she whispered to herself. "It never really went away." The 72 hours were almost up. Admiral Sullivan stood in the command center, watching reports come in from across human space. Factories were running at full capacity. Ships were being upgraded with weapons that had been sleeping for centuries. Soldiers who had never held a gun were training like they had been fighting all their lives. "Admiral," called her aide, "we're getting reports from the border systems. Korthic ships are moving into position." "How many?" 500 ships approaching Haven Colony." Sullivan nodded. "Send Captain Morrison. His ship should be ready by now." "Just one ship against 500? Sullivan smiled. "Trust me, one ship will be enough." At Haven Colony, the colonists were not running away. They were not crying or begging for help. They were standing on their porches, watching the sky, waiting to see what would happen next. Ben Taylor, a farmer, stood with his wife and children. In his hand was a weapon that had appeared in his barn that morning. He didn't know how to use it, but somehow he knew that he would figure it out when the time came. "Daddy," asked his daughter, "are we going to be okay?" Ben looked up at the stars, where enemy ships were moving into position. Then he looked at his weapon, which was humming softly in his hands. "Yes, sweetheart," he said. "We're going to be just fine." In space above Haven Colony, Captain Morrison's ship dropped out of hyperspace. The New Horizon looked the same as always, but now Jake could feel the power flowing through it. Weapons that had been sleeping were now awake. Shields that had been hidden were now active. "Captain," Lisa reported, "I'm reading 500 Korthic ships. They're moving to attack positions." "Open communications?" Jake ordered. The face of a Korthic commander appeared on the screen. He was ugly and mean-looking, with scars covering his face. "Human vessel," the alien snarled. "You will surrender immediately or be destroyed." Jake looked at the enemy commander for a long moment. Then he smiled. "I'm sorry," he said politely, "but I'm afraid I can't do that. Then you will die." "Maybe," Jake said, "but I don't think so." The Korthic commander cut the communication and ordered his ships to attack. 500 warships opened fire on one small human vessel. Jake Morrison was still smiling when he gave his first order as a combat commander: return fire. The battle at Haven Colony lasted exactly 4 minutes and 12 seconds. When it was over, Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair, staring at the empty space where 500 enemy ships had been just moments before. His hands were shaking, but not from fear, from amazement. "Lisa," he said quietly, "are they all gone?" His engineer checked her instruments 3 times before answering. "Yes, Captain. All 500 ships have been destroyed." "How?" "I don't know. Our weapons fired once, and they just disappeared." Jake looked at his crew. They all had the same expression on their faces. Shock, wonder, and something else. Something that felt like waking up from a very long dream. "Send a message to Admiral Sullivan," he ordered. "Tell her Haven Colony is safe." On the surface of Haven Colony, Ben Taylor and his family watched the light show in the sky. Bright flashes had lit up the darkness, and then everything had gone. "Quiet? Is it over?" his wife asked. Ben looked at the weapon in his hands. It had stopped humming, like it was going back to sleep. "Yes," he said, "it's over." But he was wrong. It was just beginning. News of the Haven Colony battle spread across the galaxy faster than light. The Korthuk Empire received the report from their only surviving observer, a spy ship that had been hiding at the edge of the system. Warlord Dex Carr read the report 5 times. Then he read it again. Then he called his intelligence chief into his office and showed him the recording. "This is impossible," the intelligence chief said. "One human ship cannot destroy 500 of our warships." "The recording does not lie," Dex Carr replied, "but I agree. It is impossible. Therefore, the humans have technology we do not understand." "What? Are your orders, Warlord?" Dex Carr was quiet for a long time. In his 500 years of conquest, he had never encountered anything like this. Weak species died quickly. Strong species fought back, but they still died. But the humans had done something that made no sense. They had won without even trying. "Send more ships," he finally ordered. "Send 5,000 ships to the human home system. We will crush their heart and end this quickly." But even as he gave the order, Dexcar felt something he had never felt before. Doubt. On Earth, President Ryan, Clark was preparing to give a speech. Not just to humans, but to every intelligent species in the galaxy. The message would be broadcast to over 10,000 worlds. "Mr. President," said his aide, "are you sure about this? Some of our allies might be frightened by what we're going to tell them." Clark smiled. He was an old man, and he had spent his whole life believing that peace was humanity's greatest achievement. Now he was learning that peace had been their choice, not their nature. "They should be frightened," he said. "We've been hiding what we really are for 3,000 years. It's time they knew the truth." The speech was broadcast from the United Nations building in New York. Clark stood behind a simple podium, looking like any other peaceful human leader. But his words carried across the galaxy like thunder. "My fellow beings," he began, "today marks the end of humanity's longest experiment. For 3,000 years, we have lived in peace. We chose this peace not because we were weak, but because we were strong, too strong." On 1,000 worlds, alien leaders watched the broadcast with growing concern. Our ancestors discovered that we were very good at war, so good that we became frightened of ourselves. We realized that if we continued to fight, we would eventually destroy everything we touched. So we made a choice. We put away our weapons. We hid our warships. We taught our children to explore instead of conquer. Clark paused and looked directly into the camera. But we never forgot how to fight. We just chose not to. The Korthuk Empire has forced us to remember. They attacked our colonies. They threatened our families. They have awakened something that has been sleeping for 3,000 years. Across human space, people watched their president with pride. They were beginning to understand who they really were. "We do not want war," Clark continued. "We never wanted war. But if war is brought to us, we will end it quickly. Not because we hate our enemies, but because we love our friends." The broadcast ended with a simple message: the galaxy is under human protection. Act accordingly. In the Korthic capital, Dexkar watched the human president's speech with growing anger, but underneath the anger was something else. Something that felt like ice in his stomach. "They think they can threaten us," he snarled to his generals. "They think one victory makes them strong." "Warlord," said his science advisor, "perhaps we should study this human technology before we attack again." "No, we are the Korthic Empire. We have conquered 1,000 worlds. We will not be frightened by soft creatures who play with flowers." But privately, Dexkar was beginning to wonder if the humans were as soft as they seemed. Lieutenant Amy Brooks was learning to use weapons that shouldn't exist. Colonel Martinez had taken her class to a training facility that looked like it had been built yesterday, even though the computers said it was 3,000 years old. "This is a pulse rifle," Martinez explained, holding up a weapon that looked like it was made of liquid metal. "It can punch through the armor of any known starship. Your great-great-grandmother used one just like it in the Battle of Proxima." "How? Do you know about my great-great-grandmother?" Amy asked. "Because my great-great-grandfather fought beside her. Our families have been keeping the old knowledge alive, just in case we ever needed it again." Amy took the rifle and aimed at a target. She had never held a weapon before, but her hands moved like they knew what to do. She pulled the trigger, and the target simply disappeared. "Good shot," Martinez said. "Just like your ancestor." "This is scary," Amy said. "How can I be good at something I've never done?" "Because it's in your blood. Humans have been warriors for 1,000,000 years. Peace is new. War is old." Across the training facility, hundreds of young humans were learning the same lesson. They were good at fighting. Very good. Too good. Dr. Alex Carter was deep in the archives, reading files that had been sealed for centuries. What he found there made his hands shake. The humans of 3,000 years ago had not just been good at war, they had been perfect at it. Their weapons could destroy planets. Their ships could travel through time. Their strategies could predict enemy moves before the enemy even made them. No wonder they chose peace, he whispered to himself. They were too dangerous to exist, but now they existed again. All across human space, the old weapons were waking up. The old ships were coming online. The old knowledge was flowing back into minds that had tried to forget it. On Titan, Sam Rodriguez watched his factories produce weapons that could crack moons in half. On Mars, shipyards that had been making cargo vessels were now building dreadnoughts that could fight entire fleets alone. And in space, Captain Morrison was discovering what his ship could really do. "Lisa," he said, "run a full diagnostic on all our systems. I want to know exactly what we're carrying." The results made both of them go pale. The New Horizon was not just a warship. It was a planet killer. Hidden in its hull were weapons that could sterilize entire worlds. Its engines could move faster than physics said was possible. Its computers could hack into any alien system just by looking at it. "Captain," Lisa said quietly, "we're not explorers. We're a weapon of mass destruction, pretending to be explorers. How many ships like this do we have?" Lisa checked the fleet registry. According to this, every human ship in the fleet has the same hidden systems. All 10,000 of them. Jake sat back in his chair. No wonder the galaxy was afraid of us. The Korthic fleet was moving toward Earth. 5,000 ships, the largest force in their empire's history. Warlord Dexkar commanded them personally, determined to crush the humans before they could become a real threat. But as they traveled through space, strange reports began to reach him. Korthic colonies on the edge of their empire were reporting strange activities. Human ships were appearing in their systems, but they weren't attacking. They were just watching. What do you mean, watching? Dexcar demanded. They sit at the edge of our sensor range and observe us, his intelligence chief reported. When our ships approach, they simply disappear, but they always come back. Are they gathering intelligence? We don't know. They make no hostile moves. They just watch. Dexcar felt that icy feeling in his stomach again. In his experience, enemies who attacked were dangerous, but enemies who just watched were terrifying. On Earth, Admiral Sullivan was coordinating humanity's response to the Korthic threat, but it wasn't the response anyone expected. Send patrol ships to every Korthic colony, she ordered. But don't attack. Just observe. Let them know we're there. Admiral, asked her aide, why don't we just destroy their fleet? Sullivan smiled. Because we're not monsters. We're teachers. And the first lesson is always the hardest. What lesson is that? That there are things in the universe more dangerous than they are. In the deepest archives of human space, ancient computers were running calculations that had been started 3,000 years ago. Strategies for wars that might never happen. Plans for battles against enemies that might never exist. But now, those enemies were real, and the computers were ready. The Korthic Empire was about to learn why the galaxy had been so peaceful for 3,000 years. It wasn't because humans were weak. It was because humans were strong enough to choose peace. Now they were SDR. Captain Steve Murphy stood on the bridge of the Defiance, looking out at 5,000 enemy ships. He was a calm man, the kind of person who fixed broken machines and helped lost travelers. But today, he was something else. Today, he was what humans used to be. Communications, he said to his crew. Open a channel to the enemy fleet. All frequencies. I want everyone to hear this. The face of Warlord Dexcar appeared on the main screen. The alien looked angry and confused. Behind him, Steve could see hundreds of Korthic officers watching. Human, Dexcar snarled, you face the might of the Korthic Empire. 5,000 ships against your one. Surrender now, and your death will be quick. Steve smiled. It was a friendly smile, the kind he used when explaining things to children. Warlord Dexcar, he said politely, my name is Captain Murphy. I'm here to give you a demonstration. A demonstration of what? Of why we chose peace. Dexcar laughed. A harsh sound like metal scraping stone. You chose peace because you are weak. Now you will learn what happens to the weak. No, Steve said gently. We chose peace because we are strong. Too strong. Let me show you what I mean. The Korthic fleet opened fire. 5,000 ships shot at the Defiance with everything they had. Enough firepower to destroy a small moon. The human ship didn't even slow down. Steve turned to his crew. Begin the demonstration, and please record everything. People will want to study this later. What happened next was broadcast across the galaxy. Every alien species with a radio telescope watched as one human ship did the impossible. The Defiance moved through the Korthic fleet like a dancer. Enemy weapons couldn't touch it. When they fired, their shots seemed to bend around the human ship. When they tried to ram it, they found themselves crashing into each other instead. Fascinating, Steve said, speaking to the galaxy as much as to his enemy. You see, Warlord, your ships use kinetic weapons. Very straightforward, very predictable. We stopped using those 3,000 years ago. A Korthic dreadnought, the largest ship in their fleet, fired a missile that could destroy a city. The Defiance caught it and turned it into a flower. A real flower that bloomed in space for a moment before fading away. Your defense systems are also quite simple, Steve continued, as his ship disabled 3 enemy vessels without seeming to move. You use energy shields and armor plating. We use something different. We use reality itself as our shield. Dexcar watched in horror as his mighty fleet was taken apart piece by piece. But the human ship wasn't destroying them. It was disabling them, turning their weapons into harmless light, shutting down their engines, making their warriors fall asleep at their posts. What are you doing to us? Dexcar demanded. Teaching, Steve replied. You see, when we decided to stop fighting, we didn't just put away our weapons. We improved them. We had 3,000 years to think about war, to perfect it, to make. It's so efficient that it became almost boring. Another wave of Korthik ships attacked. The Defiance responded by singing to them. A beautiful song that made their computer systems start working backwards and their artificial gravity turn sideways. The problem with war, Steve explained as he watched enemy ships floating helplessly around him, is that it's such a waste. All that energy, all that creativity, all those resources spent on destroying things. We learned to do better. Better how? Dexcar asked. He was beginning to sound less angry and more frightened. We learned to win without fighting. Watch. The Defiance reached out with invisible hands and started to rebuild the Korthik ships. But not the way they were before. Better, faster, more beautiful, and completely unable to hurt anyone. Your weapons are now musical instruments, Steve announced cheerfully. Your armor has been replaced with gardens. Your engines will only take you to places where you can help people. Across the Korthik fleet, warriors looked at their weapons and found harps and drums. They looked out their windows and saw flowers growing on their hull. They tried to fire their engines and found themselves moving toward a nearby planet that needed medical supplies. This is impossible, Dexcar whispered. No, Steve said. This is what happens when a species has 3,000 years to think. About peace. We didn't just learn to stop fighting. We learned to make fighting pointless. But the demonstration wasn't over. More Korthik fleets were coming from across their empire. Dexcar is reserves, his home guard, his most elite units. 50,000 ships in total. Steve Murphy watched them arrive with the same calm expression he had worn when facing 5,000. Oh, good, he said. More students. On Earth, people gathered in parks and town squares to watch the demonstration. They brought their children and their grandparents. They made popcorn and held picnics while one human ship taught the galaxy a lesson about power. Dr. Alex Carter stood with President Clark on the White House lawn, watching the battle on a portable screen. Is this what we were like? Carter asked. Before the Great Peace? This is what we could have been, Clark replied. If we had kept going down that path, if we hadn't chosen to stop. And now? Now we're something new. We're warriors who choose not to fight, predators who choose to protect, killers who choose to heal. In space above Earth, Captain Murphy was giving the galaxy a lesson in advanced warfare. But it wasn't the kind of warfare anyone expected. You see, he said to the alien fleet commanders who were listening in growing amazement, the old way of fighting was simple. You had weapons. I had weapons. We shot at each other until someone died. Very inefficient. 1,000 Korthik ships tried to surround the Defiance. They found themselves arranged in a perfect formation, flying in beautiful patterns while their crews were forced to sing harmony. 6 months had passed since the demonstration at Earth. The galaxy was a different place. Now, Warlord Dexcar stood on the observation deck of what used to be his flagship. The ship still looked like a warship from the outside, but inside it had been transformed into something else. The weapon bays had become classrooms. The armor storage had become a library. The training rooms had become gardens. He was no longer a warlord. He wasn't sure what he was now. "Sir?" said a voice behind him. Vex-Kar turned to see Sub-Commander Tiktar, who was also no longer what he used to be. The young Korthik wore simple clothes instead of battle armor. In his hands was a book about human philosophy. "What is it, Kiktar?" "The humans have sent another teacher, Dr. Elena Rodriguez. She wants to speak with you." Vex-Kar nodded. The humans had been sending teachers to Korthak worlds for months now. Not conquerors or governors, just teachers. People who wanted to help the Korthak learn new ways of thinking. Dr. Rodriguez was a small woman with kind eyes. She didn't look like someone who could destroy entire fleets. But Vex-Kar had learned that humans were not what they seemed. "Warlord Vex-Kar," she said, sitting down across from him. "Or would you prefer just Vex-Kar now?" "I don't know what I prefer," he admitted. "I have been a warrior my entire life. Now I find myself questioning everything I believed." "That's good," Dr. Rodriguez said. "Questions are the beginning of wisdom. I have many questions. But the biggest one is this: why haven't you destroyed us? You clearly have the power. We attacked you. We threatened your people. We deserve to be wiped out." Dr. Rodriguez smiled. "Would destroying you have made the galaxy a better place? It would have made it safer. Humans would not have to worry about Korthik attacks. But what about all the good things the Korthik people could do if they chose peace instead of war? What about all the problems you could solve? What about all the beauty you could create?" Vex-Kar was quiet for a moment. "I never thought about those things." "That's because you were taught that life was about taking things from others. We learned that life is about giving things to others. Which way makes you happier?" It was a simple question, but it hit Vex-Kar like a physical blow. He thought about all the worlds he had conquered, all the enemies he had defeated. Had any of it made him happy? Had any of it made him feel good about himself? "I don't know," he said honestly. "I don't remember ever being happy. Would you like to learn how?" For the next hour, Dr. Rodriguez talked with Vex-Kar about things he had never considered. About the joy of helping others instead of hurting them. About the satisfaction of building things instead of destroying them. About the peace that came from knowing you had made the world a little better. When their conversation ended, Vex-Kar felt strange, not bad strange, different strange. Like something inside him had shifted. Across former Korthik space, similar conversations were happening. The Empire was dissolving, but not through war or rebellion. It was dissolving because its people were choosing different lives. On the former slave world of Zeridian, Korthak overseers, who had once ruled with iron fists, were learning to farm alongside the people they had oppressed. The slaves had forgiven them, following the human example of mercy over revenge. Commander Rachel Stone visited these worlds regularly, not as a conqueror, but as a helper. She brought medical supplies, farming equipment, and teachers. But most importantly, she brought hope. The hardest part, she told her crew, is not fixing their technology or healing their bodies. It's healing their hearts, showing them that they don't have to be what they were before. On the industrial world of Korvith, former weapons factories were being converted to produce art supplies and musical instruments. The workers who had once built instruments of death were now creating instruments of beauty. Young Amy Brooks, now a lieutenant commander, was stationed there as a liaison officer. She worked with former Korthik soldiers, teaching them about human culture and learning about theirs. "It's amazing," she wrote in her journal. "These people have so much potential. They're incredibly strong and resilient. They just needed someone to show them that strength could be used for building instead of breaking." But the transformation wasn't complete everywhere. Some Korthik refused to change. Some clung to the old ways, believing that war was the only Truth in the universe. These holdouts gathered on the remote world of Korthek Prime, the original homeworld of their species. Vexstar declared to his followers, "They have poisoned our minds with their talk of peace and mercy. We must remember what we are. We are warriors. We are conquerors. We are Korthek." His followers cheered, but their hearts weren't really in it. They had seen what humans could do. They had watched their mighty empire crumble not through force, but through kindness. Some of them were beginning to wonder if Vexstar was wrong. The humans knew about the holdouts, of course. Their ships patrolled the edges of Korthek Prime, watching but not interfering. Admiral Sullivan had given strict orders. No one was to be forced to change. Everyone had the right to choose their own path, even if it was the wrong path. But the holdouts were growing restless. They wanted to strike back at the humans. They wanted to prove that the old ways were still strong. Vexstar planned one final attack. He would take his remaining ships and strike at Earth itself. He would show the galaxy that the Korthek Empire was not dead. His fleet of 200 ships launched from Korthek Prime in secret. They used old hyperspace routes that they thought the humans didn't know about. They were wrong. Captain Jake Morrison, now an admiral himself, intercepted them halfway to Earth. His ship, the New Horizon, dropped out of hyperspace directly in front of the Korthek fleet. "General Vexstar," Jake said calmly, "please turn around and go home." "Never," Vexstar snarled. "We will not be tamed by soft creatures who have forgotten what war means." "We haven't forgotten," Jake replied. "We just chose something better." The battle that followed was different from the demonstration at Earth. This time, the humans didn't try to convert their enemies or teach them lessons. This time, they simply stopped them. Vexstar's ships found themselves unable to move. Their weapons wouldn't fire. Their engines wouldn't start. They were trapped in space, helpless and harmless. But Jake didn't hurt them. Instead, he opened communications to every ship in the Korthek fleet. "Warriors of the Korthek Empire," he said, "I know you're angry. I know you're confused. Your whole world has been turned upside down, and you don't know what to believe anymore." He paused, letting his words sink in. "But ask yourselves this. What has war given you? What has conquest brought you? Are you happier now than you were before you learned to fight?" On ship after ship, Korthek warriors looked at each other with uncertainty in their eyes. "I'm going to let you go," Jake continued. "I'm going to repair your ships and send you home. But I want you to think about something. You attacked us because you thought we were weak. But we didn't fight back because we are strong. Strong enough to choose mercy over revenge." One by one, the Korthek ships powered down their weapons. One by one, their crews asked to surrender. General Vexstar was the last to give up. He sat alone on his bridge, staring at the human ship that had defeated him without firing a shot. "I don't understand," he whispered. "That's okay," Jake replied gently. "Understanding takes time, but you have the rest of your life to figure it out." A year later, Warlord Vexstar stood in what used to be his throne room. But it wasn't a throne room anymore. It was a school. Korthek children sat in circles, learning about mathematics and art and music. Human teachers worked alongside Korthek teachers, sharing knowledge and friendship. Vexstar himself had become a teacher. He taught history, helping young Korthek understand where their people had come from and where they could go. "Today," he said to his class, "we're going to learn about the Great Transformation. Can anyone tell me what that was?" A young Korthek girl raised her hand. "That's when the humans taught us that being strong doesn't mean hurting people." "Very good. And what did we learn from the humans?" An older boy answered. "We learned that the strongest people are the ones who choose to be gentle." Vexstar smiled. It was still strange, smiling. But he was getting better at it now. After class, he walked to his private office. On his desk was a letter from Dr. Rodriguez. She had returned to Earth, but she still wrote to him regularly. Dear Thex Carr, the letter read, I hope your teaching is going well. I wanted you to know that the Galactic Council has approved the formation of the new Korthak Republic. You will have full membership in the Federation and equal representation in all galactic affairs. We are proud to call you our friends. Thex Carr set down the letter and looked out his window. In the distance, he could see former Korthak warriors working in the fields alongside their former slaves. They were laughing together, sharing jokes and stories. 6 months ago, he would have called them weak. Now he knew better. Sub-Commander Kiktar knocked on his door. Sir, the human ship is leaving orbit. Captain Morrison wanted to say goodbye. Thex Carr walked to the communications center. On the screen, Admiral Morrison's familiar face appeared. Thex Carr. Jake said with a warm smile, It's been an honor working with you. The honor is mine, Admiral. Your people have given us something we never nay.